Hello everybody, my name is Clifton Johnson. I'm the founder of the Empower Series. I want to welcome you to Empower Series Online. That's right, online. You may know us as being the workshop Empower Series on the third Saturday of every month. We're doing a workshop somewhere in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. On the Friday before, we have a lunch and learns, usually it's at the Meadows Conference Center. And for the month of March, our plan was to highlight this Jamaican restaurant called the Island Spot on Friday, but that's been canceled because of what we're going through here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, as well as in the library. We're not going to do the library workshop on Saturday. We're going to drop a digital content on credit report. But before I even get to that, I want to thank you for all of your generous donations. We are a 501c3 organization. Our purpose is to inspire people to thrive and to achieve their financial, personal, and professional goals. If it wasn't for your donations, we wouldn't be able to do the things we're doing today, produce our content. Also, if it wasn't for our generous donations from Comerica Bank and their charitable grant, we wouldn't be able to do the things that we do. Also, if it wasn't for AE Media Group giving us all of their in-kind donation and helping us look good on social media, I'm just telling you, when you have a good idea that is about giving and caring, I believe resources will be attracted to you. So I want to thank all of the resources that have been coming together to make the Empower Series what it is. We've been doing this since 2011, and we're going to keep doing it forever. Now, what are we going to do this month in March? This month in March, we're going to talk about credit. Now, we have a lady joining us who's going to be on the program, and she's going to talk about credit reports and how to become a ninja. So what is that, a ninja? Well, I'll let her tell that to you, but who she is, I'm going to do that part. Her name is Alderete, and she is the Director of Education and Community Relations at Money Management International. You might be asking, what is Money Management International? Money Management International is the largest provider of nonprofit financial counseling and education in the United States. That's right, we're dealing with the big boys, y'all. So they do a ton of programs, a ton of content, counseling online. You can look them up at www.moneymanagement.org and find out all of their services. But what she does, she manages a team of trainers and she develops curriculum. She develops curriculums for internal and external financial literacy programs. She does workshops, facilitative workshops, community workshops, online and webinars. Everybody needs to understand how to become a credit report ninja. So without any further ado, let me go ahead and introduce you to Alderete.
Thank you for joining us today for this presentation of Becoming a Credit Ninja. My name is Alderete. I'm the Director of Education and Community Relations at Money Management International, or MMI. MMI is a 501c3 nonprofit housing and credit counseling organization, and we offer many great services to help clients get their finances on track. So whether it's a free debt and budget counseling session or a credit review session, student loan counseling, debt management plans, or so much more, we have a service that can help. Please give us a call at 866-889-9347 or visit us online at www.moneymanagement.org to learn more about our organization or to schedule a session today. I'd also like to thank the Empower Series for having us on today. The Empower Series Dallas is normally held on the third Saturday of each month at the Dallas Public Library Highland Hills branch and is made possible by support from Comerica Bank, AE Media Group, and your individual donations. For more information about the Empower Series or to check out some of their upcoming events, please visit their website at www.empowerseries.com. Thanks again for joining us today, and I hope you enjoy this presentation of Becoming a Credit Ninja.
All right, so let's get started on Becoming a Credit Report Ninja. We're going to cover some really great stuff today. And so I'd like to take a moment and just talk about what we'll walk through for the next 30 or 45 minutes. So we're going to talk a little bit about what is in your credit report, what makes up your credit report, and how do you find it? How do you get a copy of your credit report? Why should you care about the information contained in your credit report? Why is it important, and what is credit used for? We'll also talk about what to do if there are errors on your credit report, and if you're the victim of identity theft. We'll also take a look at how your score is calculated, and then some tips and strategies for you to be able to positively impact your credit score and pay off debt if that's a goal for you. So, credit affects us in so many ways, and you know the most common ones, whether you get approved for a loan and how much interest you'll pay on that loan. But our credit is also considered for things like renting an apartment, down payments on utilities and cell phones, insurance, and even whether or not we're offered employment. So, it's critical to know what your credit says about you and then make sure that it's working in your favor. So, consider this question. You don't know me, but I'd like to borrow some money. If you were a lender and I applied for a loan, what kinds of things would you want to know about me to determine whether or not I would pay you back? You're probably thinking about things like, well, have I paid others back before and were those payments made on time consistently? Do I have a job and how long have I been at that job? And how much money do I make? Do I make enough money to pay that loan back? Why am I asking to borrow money in the first place? What will I use it for? And how much money do I already owe to other creditors to make sure that this is a good risk and I have enough money to pay back also when I think about the other loans that I owe? So these are all things that are relevant to qualified lending decisions. And because lenders don't know us personally, our credit report is used to answer many of these questions, and they help creditors decide whether or not we're a good lending risk. There are three main credit reporting agencies: Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax. So, who can access your credit report? Well, businesses with a permissible purpose can access your credit report. So, for example, a landlord if you're trying to lease an apartment, of course, a creditor when you apply for credit or a loan, or if you're delinquent, insurance underwriting, employers if a credit check is required for the position. So there's a difference between a hard pull and a soft pull. And you may have heard that if you check your credit or if someone checks your credit, it's going to negatively affect your score. Well, if it's a hard pull, it will affect your score in a very small way, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But if it's a soft pull, that's typically something like an employer checking your credit, and so that shouldn't affect your score. The easiest way that I think about this is that a soft pull is done anytime you're not asking to borrow money. So, for example, at a potential employer, pulling your credit report to take a look at your payment history and try to determine character. So those are the difference between a hard pull and a soft pull. And again, a hard pull will affect your score in just a little bit, but a soft pull should not. So let's take a better look at what's contained in a credit report. And now I said that there are three major credit reporting agencies, and each of those credit reports from each different agency might look a little bit different, but in general, your credit report is going to contain the same types of information across the board. And that would be personal identifying information about you, things like your name, address, things like that, information about your creditors. And so in this section would be who you owe, how much you owe, and your payment history. We would also see collections information on a credit report, public records such as judgments or liens, bankruptcies. We'd also see inquiries. And so this would be anytime you've asked for credit to be extended. And so that would be where a hard pull would negatively affect your credit score just a little bit. So again, in general, these are the types of things that are going to be on each credit report. Now, because each reporting agency gets information from creditors differently, sometimes it's in a little bit of a different format. But in general, that's the information that's included in every credit report. So if you've checked your credit report in the last 12 months, kudos to you. If you have not, don't feel bad. Most of the folks that we talk to don't quite know where to start to pull their credit report. So that's exactly why you're taking advantage of this session today. So it's critical to take a look at your credit report from each of those three major agencies at least once every 12 months. And so as consumers, we're entitled to a free copy of our credit report from each agency every 12 months. And you can get that by going to www.annualcreditreport.com. You can also call 878-322-8228 and request a copy of your credit report over the phone. You can also write in and request a copy of your credit report through the mail. Keep in mind the free report that we get from each agency is on a rolling 12-month calendar. So at MMI, we suggest pulling one every 4 months so you're keeping up on all 3 reports regularly. And also, if you're denied credit for any reason, you can obtain another free credit report directly from the credit reporting agency that the lender used, even if you've already pulled those free reports from annualcreditreport.com. So once you've got a copy of your credit report in front of you, what now? Well, the first thing you want to do is comb through the report and identify any information that doesn't look right. And this isn't always maybe an account should have been paid off and it wasn't, or a payment was made and it's not reflecting. And many times that's the case, but this also could be something as simple as your name is incorrect, or your address is incorrect. So there is one person that's responsible for identifying and disputing inaccuracies on your credit report, and that's you. So it's critical that we're taking a look at it every so often and disputing errors as we see them. Now, if you do see something on your report that doesn't look quite right, you can and should dispute it. Reporting agencies and most creditors and the credit bureaus have online dispute forms, but you can also mail your dispute in writing. So you should only dispute legitimate errors. If you do dispute a charge that's legitimate, it may come off temporarily, but if it's determined by the creditor that you do actually owe the debt, it's going to go right back in your credit report. So when you do open a dispute, you want to make sure to include any backup documentation you might have when you make that dispute initially. For example, if you're disputing a payment, let's say that you made a payment and it isn't posted as a payment on your credit report, you'll want to include maybe a copy of the canceled check. Or information from your bank statement that shows that the payment was made to that creditor. So when you make the initial dispute, you'll want to be sure to include any backup documentation that you have to make the investigation process easier and more likely that inaccurate item will come off your credit report permanently. The other thing that it's important to recognize is that it's free for you as the consumer to report errors and dispute errors on your credit report. So this is important to recognize because if you come across an organization or a person who's offering to clean your credit for a fee, and they're disputing things on your credit report for a fee, please be aware that this is something you can do by yourself free of charge, and it's a fairly easy process. So like I said, you can either dispute directly with the credit reporting agencies on their sites, Equifax.com, Experian.com, TransUnion.com. You could do it through annualcreditreport.com, or you can contact those agencies directly by calling to get additional information. The other thing you'll want to do once you get your credit report and you've already combed through for things that might not be yours is you want to just kind of take a look at things that are on your credit report that maybe are blemishes. They are yours, they just need to be corrected. So this would be anything like late payments, or payments that haven't been made. You'll want to make a plan to get on track and make those payments. And so if you're dealing with more debt than you can handle, we'll talk about a pay down strategy at the end of this session, but that's the second thing that you'll want to do when you take a look at your credit report. And then once you see the report and you've combed through and disputed errors that are on there and made a plan to deal with anything else that's not necessarily favorable, and you've got your credit the way you want it, it's critical that you're continuing to look at your credit report at least once every 12 months from each agency, just to make sure that nothing else has cropped up on there. So let's take a moment now to talk a little bit about identity theft and sort of how you can become a credit ninja and knock that out. There are 3 prongs of identity theft, and those are deter, detect, and defend. And unfortunately, identity theft is often committed by somebody that we know, like family and friends. And this is especially true of child identity theft, which we'll talk about in just a minute. So by doing these 3 things, deter, detect, and defend, we can start to protect ourselves and our personal information, our financial information, from things like identity theft. So let's take a look at some of those strategies now. So first and foremost, deter. So these are things that we all know that we should be doing to just keep our information as safe as possible. 1, make sure that you're shredding all important documents. When in doubt, shred it. Always protect your social security number. Be diligent with that. Sometimes scammers and fraudsters can be pretty tricky. And so if anybody's asking for your social security number, you want to be wary before you give that out. If you get a phone call from someone that you don't recognize, you can always um, it, call them back. Let's say that it's your bank and they say, hey, we're calling to verify some information, but we need you to verify your information first. If you're not feeling good about that, you can say, that sounds good. Let me give you a call back. And if you call that number back from the back of your card, then you know who you're talking to. So, don't write your social security number on documents, and just kind of keep that guarded. Never give out personal information. So that goes along the same lines that we were talking about. When in doubt, ask those questions and do your due diligence to confirm who you're speaking to. Don't ever click on links in unsolicited emails or text messaging. Sometimes this can lead to what we call a phishing scam. And so when you click on that link in an unsolicited email or text message, it opens your device up for scammers to be able to get in there and get some information. You always want to make sure that you're using passwords that are hard to crack and that you're changing those passwords frequently. And then finally, keep your information in a safe place and safeguard that at all times. Things like passwords, PIN numbers, personal information. You'll just want to make sure that you keep in a safe place and safeguard them. The next step in avoiding identity theft is detect. And so these are just some things to look out for and take action against if they happen. So you'll want to keep an eye out for bills that don't arrive on time or expected. If you've got credit cards, utility bills, bank statements, anything like that, whether you've signed up for online statements and stopped mail delivery or not, those statements typically come once a month. And so keep an eye out for those. And if you don't get the statement as you should, you'll want to be more diligent. Maybe call the financial institution and find out what's going on. It's possible that somebody could have gotten the statement. You'll also want to take a look and keep an eye out for unexpected credit cards or account statements. If you get an account statement for a card that you don't have, it's a pretty good indicator that maybe somebody is perpetrating identity theft. Unexpected denials of credit. So if you haven't applied for something but you're denied, that's also a red flag. Of course, calls or letters about purchases that you did not make. Probably most of us have been in a situation before where our financial institution will call, even if it is our activity, but it looks a little bit suspicious. And they say, hey, we just want to verify this activity. If it's a purchase that you did not make, that's another red flag. And then finally, you want to keep an eye out for charges on your statements that you don't recognize. So we talked just a couple minutes ago about keeping an eye out for those bills that don't arrive as expected. But when you do get those statements, it's important to take a couple of minutes and comb through them and really make sure that the activity that's on there is the activity that was done by you. And of course, if it's not, you'll want to take steps to contact your financial institution immediately and report that as identity theft or fraud. And then the third prong in avoiding identity theft is to defend. And so these are sort of the steps that you would take if you find that you have been the victim of identity theft or fraud. So the first thing that you'll want to do is contact the security or fraud departments of your financial institutions. And this isn't just the bank or financial institution where the fraud occurred. This would be all the financial institutions that you do business with, and just let them know, hey, I had some fraud on one of my accounts. I just want to alert you so that you can keep an eye open. They're going to ask you some questions to determine what your situation is and the best course of action for you. You'll want to be diligent in making sure that for a good while you pay extra attention to those statements, all of your different. The next thing you'll want to do is follow up in writing. So if you contact the security or fraud department and have a conversation over the phone, put that conversation in writing and follow up with the organization so that you and them have a copy of those records in writing. Typically, they're going to have an identity theft affidavit that they'll send you. And so it's important to complete that affidavit and send it back. This is what allows your financial institutions to start the process of investigating that claim. Ask for verification, of course, anytime you're speaking to somebody about the identity theft or fraud situation, and make sure that you keep copies of all documentation related to the incident. The next thing you'll want to do is file a police report so that you can have that documentation on file as well, and then report the theft to the police. And this way, you've done everything that you can, not only with your financial institutions, but with your local law enforcement agency as well. So no matter how far this gets or how many steps you have to take to remedy the situation, you've got everything documented from the outset. Believe it or not, children are often victims of identity theft, and I alluded to this a little bit earlier. Unfortunately, their social security numbers can be used to apply for government benefits, open accounts, apply for loans or services, and even rent a place to live. If you're a parent, you can check your child's credit report. So, what you'll want to do is contact the bureaus and ask for a manual search of the child's file. They'll check for files relating to the child's name and social security number, and also for files related only to the child's social security number. Now, keep in mind, you'll likely have to provide some proof that you are the child's parent or guardian, so they might require copies of the child's birth certificate or adoption certificate and social security information, as well as your identification or documents proving legal guardianship. You might also have to provide proof of address, like a utility bill or a statement, something like that. Um, for more information on identity theft and for some really good tips and resources as well, I encourage you to visit the Federal Trade Commission. You can check out their website at www.ftc.gov. And when you get there, you'll see immediately a section for identity theft. And there's information, there are forms, and then what to do if you feel you've been a victim. And so it's really something to be on the lookout for as we take steps to sort of manage our credit and make sure that everything on there is accurate. So now that we've talked about why the credit report is important and how to safeguard our information, I'd like to talk a little bit more now about what our credit score is really made up of. So there are several different credit scoring models out there. But for our purposes today, we're going to focus on the FICO score. And that's the most commonly used score for credit, which is why we focus on that in our presentation. It's also important to recognize that there are different versions of the FICO score, and they're typically adding versions all the time. And so but the FICO score on average ranges from 300 to 850. So 300 be the lowest possible score, 850 would be the highest. And so you can kind of see here the scale of what's considered poor, fair, good, excellent, different things like that. Behind this scale, you can start to see the graphic of things that are those things that make up your credit score. So 35% of your overall credit score is payment history. And this is just, are you making your payments on time, consistently every month for at least the minimum amount? I always think about budgeting and money management as kind of a puzzle, right? And so if the budget was the first piece of this puzzle, credit would be sort of the second piece. And I say this, I think about it like this because without an effective budget in place, it's difficult to maintain that payment history. You need to know how much you owe each creditor each month so that you can make those payments on time and consistently. And as you can see, that's the biggest thing you can do to positively affect your credit score. The next largest chunk of your credit score is made up of the amounts owed to all creditors, and this takes up 30% of your overall score. And this is also sometimes referred to as utilization. And so what this is really talking about is how much of the available credit that you have you used? And so good rule of thumb is to try to keep that at like 36% or lower. For a favorable score. So this just means that if all other things are created equal, person A and person B both have an account with $1,000 available. Person A charges $300. Person B charges $999. Again, all other things being equal, person A would have a better credit score because their utilization or the amount that they owe is lower. So 65% payment history and amount owed, 65% of your overall credit score really is based on that budget. Are you making your payments on time and living below your means so that you're not charging more than you can afford to pay off? So the next pieces of your credit score are made up of length of credit history, and that's 15%. And this is just how long you've been effectively managing the accounts that you have. And then types of credit. This would be whether you just have credit cards or maybe you're effectively managing credit cards, student loan, auto loan, mortgage. And then the final 10% of your credit score is made up of new credit or inquiries. And this is where we were talking earlier about the difference between a soft pull and a hard pull, and that you may hear people say, well, if you check my credit, it's going to hurt my score. It will affect your score about 10% of the overall score, which is fairly low. And again, it's just because it's a determiner of risk. And so if you keep to those soft inquiries, like you checking your own credit or a potential employer, those should not affect your score. So now that we have a better idea of what the credit score is made up of, let's take a closer look at what kind of impact, direct financial impact, your credit score can have on your budget. So the example that we show here is a $42,000 truck. This is a pretty nice truck. So let's take a look at a couple of people who'd like to purchase this truck. We have Frank and we have Sheila, and they're both in the market for a new truck. But Frank's credit score is currently a 590, while Sheila has a current score of 760. While they both might be approved for the truck, their bottom line cost is very different. Remember, lenders determine how risky you are based on your credit history. So if you have a lower score, they may not lend to you at all, or they might extend credit at a higher interest rate, like we see here. So in the chart that we see, Frank at his 590 is likely to get an interest rate of about 11.11% on a new car and 16.23% on a used car. But Sheila, with what's considered a good score at 760 in that range, is looking at a potential new car interest rate of 3.99% and used car of 5.45%. That's quite a difference. But what does this mean in overall impact to your bottom line? Well, we take a look at that here. At his 590 credit score, we see that Frank might get a 72-month term on this truck with an interest rate of 11.11%. His monthly payment is about $801.80. And over the life of the loan, he'll likely pay about $15,729 in interest, which makes the total cost of that $42,000 truck almost $58,000 for Frank. Now we take a look at Sheila, and she's got a good credit score, 760. Same term, 72 months, but the difference here is that her interest rate is 3.99%, vastly lower than Frank's. We see immediately that she's got a much lower monthly payment. This is freeing up almost $150 in Sheila's monthly budget that she can use for other things, debt payoff, reaching her goals, whatever she wants to do. Then we take a look at the bigger picture. She might pay just about a little bit over $5,000 in interest over the life of the loan, and it makes the $42,000 truck for Sheila about $47,000 versus $57,000 for Frank. So you can see here that just the credit score is saving Sheila about $10,000 on the same truck that Frank would buy. When we see it visually like this, it always gives us a much better idea of the impact that our credit score can have to our bottom line budget and our everyday living expenses. But the good news is you can definitely make a positive impact on your credit score. So here are some things that you can do to make a positive impact regularly. And these go back to the pie chart that we saw a few minutes ago. First and foremost, make your payments on time consistently every month. Secondly, don't take on new debt. Try to manage the debt that you do have and put a plan in place to pay that down or pay that off. And we'll talk about that in a minute. Reduce your debt levels. So if you're carrying a high debt load from month to month, make a plan to pay that down. And then keep a good eye on the mix of credit that you're managing so that you've got a good, healthy mix of credit. And so if you can do these things consistently, you should see that it's got a very good positive impact on your credit score. So let's talk a moment about building and rebuilding credit. If you find yourself in a situation where either you're just starting out and you need to establish credit, or you've gotten into some trouble in the past and you need to take steps to rebuild your credit, all of these are good strategies that you might take advantage of. Checking accounts and savings accounts, typically with your financial institution, um, although they don't typically report to the credit reporting agencies, there are some that do. So you can work with your financial institution and ask them about credit building products, checking accounts and savings accounts that are reporting to the credit reporting agencies on a monthly basis so that you're getting those on-time payments reported and you can start to build or rebuild your credit. Another strategy to do this would be to get a department store card or a gas card and manage those responsibly. So typically, department store cards or gas cards are a little bit easier to get. Um, and particularly with a gas card, this is something that you've probably factored into your monthly budget anyway. It's an expense that you have to have. And so if you can use your credit card just for gas, pay it in full every month when the bill comes, you're not getting charged any interest, but you are showing regular on-time payments, which will healthily impact your score. The next would be to establish payment history with utility bills. And again, a lot of times smaller local lenders will take into account your payment history with utility bills. The other thing you might want to consider is a secured credit card. This is a great product if you're trying to build or rebuild credit. And a secured credit card really just allows you to use your money. You kind of make up a down payment on that account. You put money into the account, and then you have that money available to you in a credit card. The reason that this is helpful is that as you make payments on that each month, you're reporting on time regular payments, but there's no risk to the financial institution because you've already made the payment. It's secured. The last strategy would be to add an authorized signer on your account. While this can be effective, you want to be careful with this approach. If you're an authorized signer for someone else, or whether someone's an authorized signer for you, it's important to realize that that person's credit or your credit is going to affect the other. And so you want to be careful with this. If you get into a situation where you agree to be an authorized signer for somebody, please be aware that you're kind of taking on their credit history or their payment patterns as well. So this can be a good thing or a bad thing, but definitely something to consider and use caution around. So we've covered a lot so far. One of the things that I'd like to talk about now, though, is about paying down debt, because when we start to talk about rebuilding or managing debt, I think in a lot of cases, this is something that people are focused on. You know, I've got more debt than I need, and it happened very, very quickly, and I need to make a plan to pay that off to get more money back into my bottom line every month and just reduce that debt to improve my overall credit score and my financial situation. So let's take a look at one strategy to help us do that. So this would be with a rapid debt payoff plan. And so a rapid debt payoff plan really works with any type of debt. It's a strategy that you can use to reduce the overall time that it'll take to pay down your debt, but also reduce the overall amount of interest that you'll pay over time. So again, looking at that big picture and how much you end up paying for a good or service. The other thing a rapid debt payoff plan will do is allow rapid savings accumulation post debt payoff. So what this means is once you've paid your debt off in full, you can use that same strategy, but flip it around and use it in a way to save money instead of pay off money. So let's take a look briefly at how that works. All right, so the first thing that you'll want to do is create a current list of all the debts that you owe. And so you can kind of see an example here on the screen. I've got, let's say, an electronics store card, department store, and then a couple of different Visa cards. So you'll want to list out those creditors, the amount that you owe to each one, the interest rate that you're paying on each one, and then the minimum monthly payment. And then you'll want to total that up so that you can see the total that we owe is $16,883, and we're paying $337.65 a month to pay that debt down. Then you'll want to choose the method that is best for you in getting out of debt. So some people go the route of paying the lowest balance first. Some people like to pay off the card with the highest interest rate first. Whatever method you choose is the method that's going to be good for you. Both of these will allow you to pay down debt quicker and start to see some momentum. So you might have also heard about this as kind of a snowball effect, right? Or an avalanche effect. And really the idea is that the more you pay off, the more momentum you start to build, and it's kind of exciting. And then it's like, how fast can I get out of debt, right? So these are some really good strategies. So you'll choose the method that works best for you, whether it's lowest balance card or highest interest rate card. And that's the one that you'll focus on paying off first. So in this example, we're going to pay the electronic store card off first. The next step would be to establish a rapid recovery payment. What is this? Well, if I can find an amplifier, which is really just additional dollars out of my budget to make a little bit more of a regular monthly payment than I've been making, let's say $50 in this example. Now, instead of overall my debt load being $337.65 a month, I'm paying $387.65. So if I can free up additional money in my budget, however much I can, is going to help me get out of debt faster and pay less overall. We'll talk about some strategies to free up additional dollars here in just a minute, but this is another key factor, is if you can find a rapid recovery amplifier. So in the situation that we're looking at today, I was able to go through the budget and find an additional $50 that I could utilize to pay down my debt. And so the first thing I'm going to do is I want to knock out the first debt on my list, which was the electronics store. So instead of making that regular $25 minimum payment, I'm adding my $50 to it and I'm paying $75 a month on that account. You can see where instead of paying 25, but I pay 75, I'm going to be paid out of debt on that account fairly quick. The important thing too is that I'm maintaining my minimum regular payments on all other accounts, so my $387.65 doesn't change. Once I have that first debt paid off, my natural tendency might be to say, yippee, I have an extra $50 or $75 in my budget. I'm going to go, add lattes back in. Nope. So remember, we've set a goal to get paid out of debt, and the amount that we're paying each month doesn't change. So our budget stays the same. We've still allocated $387.65 to pay off debt. But what we're going to do is take that $75 that we were paying to our electronics store, and we're going to add that to the minimum payment on our department store debt. So now, instead of paying $15.64 as the minimum every month, I'm paying $90.64 on that department store. At almost $100 a month, how much quicker am I going to be able to pay down that $782? Very fast. Once that's paid off, you know what's coming next. I take that $90.64 and I add it to Visa number one. So now I've bumped that payment from $136 and change up to $227 and change, and I'm still rolling along paying off my debt very quickly. And then, of course, once that debt is paid off, I take the full amount, $387.65, and I put it towards Visa number two. At this point, that highest balance owed is going to get paid down fairly quickly, and I'll be out of debt in no time. So the idea here is that the amount that's coming out of your regular monthly budget doesn't change. And as you pay down debt, you just shift that amount around so that you can pay down that debt even faster, an avalanche approach. Another key here is that you make consistent on-time payments, right? In order for this to work, we want to make sure that we're continuing to make minimum payments on all cards at least, so that we don't incur any additional fees or increased interest rates, and that we can maintain our plan. Another important thing would be not to incur any new debt. So of course you can imagine that if we're on a rapid recovery debt payment plan, but we add more debt to the equation, it's going to kind of mess everything up. So again, critical to build that budget first, so you know how much money you're dealing with and you can live within your means and really achieve that goal of reducing your debt. So quickly here, we take a look at a summary and comparison, just so, again, we can take a look at big picture. And we're seeing here the method, minimum only, rapid recovery minimum, and then rapid recovery plus that amplifier, which was the $50 we found in our budget. And we can see how many months it will take us to pay off each, and how much we'll pay in interest. So again, big picture, we're saving a ton of money and getting paid out of debt in so much less time if we're able to really kind of make that plan and stick to it with that budget. So when we talk about finding an amplifier to increase the amount of money that you're using to pay down or off your debt every month, here are some strategies that might work. And again, this all comes back to the budget and really setting that goal and keeping our eye on the prize to achieve it. So here are some strategies. You know, we talk to people and they say, hey, win the lottery. Well, great idea if it happens, but I think we should be realistic in how we can find those additional dollars, right? So the other thing that could be a possibility is to borrow from family or friends. Now you know that there are pros and cons around this, and so if it's something that works for you with your current network, then fantastic. But if that's not an option, we've got some others on the list. We've heard people sometimes say suspend or decrease their contributions to their 401k or retirement fund. This is something you want to be very careful with, because just as we've seen that amplifier and the avalanche effect that can be made on paying off debt, the same is true of savings, and we'll see an example of that in just a moment. So if you can really comb through the budget and find additional dollars in a different way, that's favorable than suspending or decreasing contributions to your 401k, because you really want to have the time value of money in building that savings retirement. Another option that we commonly hear is to use savings or borrow against retirement. So again, this is an individually based situation, but typically if you have enough savings available, liquid savings to maintain an emergency fund, but still use that to help get out of debt faster, then that's fantastic. Go ahead and do it. You want to be very careful about borrowing against your retirement for some of the same reasons that I just talked about in option number 3. And so again, if you're not quite sure, you want to take a better look at your individual situation and maybe talk with a professional. The next possibility that we hear is windfall amounts. And so this is the perfect time of year to be talking about this, right? So a windfall amount would be sort of unexpected money that's not part of your regular monthly budget. This might be tax refund, or a gift, or sort of something from family or friends, bonus, commission, anything like that as well would be a windfall amount of money. And again, our natural tendency is to say, fantastic, I got this income tax refund check and I'm going to go shopping and I'm going to, do all the things that I've been waiting all year to do. Well, if we're able to live within our means and use that windfall amount to pay off our debt, we can get out of debt that much faster and save ourselves more money in the long run. The next strategy, which I love, is to really just tighten expenses. And this requires you to go through your budget and determine those things that you want and those things that you need, and really see where you might be able to make some temporary adjustments to get yourself out of debt. And then another option would be to increase your income. And you could do this in several different ways. Maybe side gig, gig economy, things like Uber, Lyft, selling crafts or different things that you make, tutoring kids for math or something on the side. So there are all different ways that people can increase their income, even temporarily, to achieve their financial goals. So these are just some of the ideas that we hear from folks or that we see. So I just wanted to make sure that I took a moment to talk through those in case you're thinking, gosh, I don't know if I have an extra $50 in my budget. You might, come through and see what your situation allows. Another technique would be step down spending. So this is kind of a cool technique when we're talking about tightening the budget or tightening the belt, right? And so the step down spending technique really asks us to do something that we would normally do, but spend less money doing it. Just look for cheaper alternatives. And so if we were going to go use the example of movie and a popcorn. And so let's say that me and another person were going to go to the movies and buy popcorn. I might be looking at $45 to do that. But if I forego the popcorn and the drinks and I just pay for the movie tickets, I might be able to bump that down to $20. If I choose not to go to the movie at night, but I go during the daytime instead, I might be able to step that spending down to $12. If I rent a movie and watch that at home instead of going to the theater, I step it down to $2. But if I watch something free on Netflix or from the library, I might step this down to nothing. So it just kind of gives you the idea of a step down spending technique. So it's taking the thing that you might want to do and then really just kind of looking for your less expensive alternatives. Here's another example that we use with cable. So the cost of premium cable might be $200. We could maybe step that down to regular cable and save over $100 a month. If we step that down to basic, we're saving an additional $20. If we cut cable altogether and utilize streaming services, maybe we're only at $35 versus the $200 we started at. And then if we just watch TV over the air with an antenna or rabbit ears, like maybe we're zero. So you can get the idea of how you might be able to implement a step down spending technique in your everyday life and all the different expenses that you have. So again, these are just some good ideas. You'll want to take a look at your individual situation and find out the ones that work for you. So then what comes next? What when you've made these adjustments and you've paid down all your debt? What an exciting thing. The same is true as I talked a little bit about earlier about that avalanche or snowball effect. You can use this to save money as well. And so here's an example of a rapid recovery savings plan. So let's say that we were able to find additional money in our debt and pay ourselves out of debt within whatever time frame that we specified. Let's say it was 3 years. If we took, in our example, that $387 that we were paying each month, and at the end of our debt payment cycle, when everything was paid off, we said, I'm going to continue to save that money and see how fast I can build my savings. The example that we see here is that in 13 months, at saving $387 a month with 1% interest, over the course of 13 months, we'd have saved over $5,000. And so, like I said, compounding, whether it's interest to save, short-term, long-term, or interest to get out of debt, compounding money really does make a huge difference. So we have covered so many things today. We talked about why credit is important, how to get a copy of your credit report, the importance of looking at that credit report every 12 months, how to get out of debt, strategies to achieve and maintain a positive credit score. I appreciate so much your joining me today. And I would just like to remind you again that if you're interested in a session with one of our MMI counselors, you can visit us online at www.moneymanagement.org or give us a call at 866-889-9347. Thank you again so much for joining us today, and I hope you have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you for watching our Empower Series YouTube video. I really hope you enjoyed it. Remember to hit the subscribe button below, as well as the little button to be notified the next time we upload our video. Until then, stay connected with us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever your social media flavor is. Inspire the world to thrive. See you soon.